The doctor's voice still echoed in June's mind long after the words left his mouth. "You're not sick, you're pregnant." For a moment, the world stood still. June sat frozen in the cold hospital room, staring at the doctor as if the walls were closing in around her. It felt impossible, like someone else's life, someone else's mistake. Her hands trembled slightly as she rose from the chair, her thoughts spinning, her heartbeat thudding in her ears. As she stepped out into the hallway, the bright hospital lights felt harsher than before. And without warning, her mind went straight to Han. Han, the man who had walked into her life like a warm sunrise and disappeared just as quickly. She remembered the day she first met him. She had been assigned by her director to work as his personal translator and assistant during his business day in Canada. Carbon Translation Group handled corporate foreigners who needed language help, guiding them through meetings, travel, deals, and day-to-day life. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid her bills and kept her dreams alive. June had moved from Africa, chasing a future her homeland couldn't offer, at least not then. Her Chinese wasn't perfect yet, but she had worked hard for it, studying with a hunger only an immigrant chasing opportunity could understand. And then Han walked into that small office. He had stared at her with a quiet softness, like he was trying to recognize something familiar in a stranger. He held her gaze for a few seconds too long, and when her director spoke, Han blinked as if waking from a spell. She had looked back at him, curious, unsure, but quickly dropped her eyes. It should have stayed professional. It was supposed to stay professional. Han was the CEO of Greener Grass Holdings, one of China's biggest real estate companies. A man born into power, carrying a legacy his father had built brick by brick. Meanwhile, June was alone in a foreign country, trying to build a life from scratch. But fate didn't care about their differences. They bonded over language, culture, and the quiet moments between meetings. Han taught her Chinese words that textbooks never mentioned, words soaked in emotion and daily life. She taught him simple English phrases to help him blend into the Western world around him. He stole glances like a shy schoolboy, and every time she caught him, he looked away with a hint of embarrassment. For him, it wasn't just her beauty. It was her strength, her warmth, her resilience. Then came that late-night drive from a delayed contractor meeting. The city was quiet, the sky dark, and the car filled with an unspoken tension. Han finally said what had been sitting in his heart. He wanted more than a working relationship, more than stolen glances. June refused at first. Company rules were strict, and she had worked hard to lose everything. But love is stubborn, and rules rarely win against two hearts falling fast. They kept their relationship hidden, whispering their feelings behind closed doors. But then everything changed. One night on the balcony of her apartment, Han got a call. His father had fallen seriously ill. He had to return to China immediately. June felt fear tighten around her chest, even though he promised he'd return the next week. Something in her heart whispered that the promise might break. She was right. That was the last time she saw him. Her calls wouldn't go through. Her texts were never delivered. And the final blow came when she saw his picture online. Han smiling beside a beautiful Chinese woman. The headline, "Heir to Greener Grass Holdings set to unite with partner soon." Her heart shattered. She thought heartbreak was enough pain for one lifetime. But now she carried his child. Walking out of the hospital, tears blurred her vision. She tried calling him one more time, one last attempt, one last hope, but the line was disconnected. Across the ocean, Han awoke with his heart pounding.
His dream clung to him like shadows in a dark room. June stood beside his bed in the dream, holding a baby. Her eyes were filled with tears. "You broke your promise and left us." The words stabbed through him. Han sat upright, shaken. "Us? June, with a baby?" 18 months had passed since he'd left Canada. 18 long months of thinking about her every day, but never daring to reach out. Not once had he dreamed something like this. His father was better now, back in control of the company. The crisis that had pulled Han home had ended. But the damage, the silence, the distance between him and June had remained. He remembered the messages she sent back then, messages he never answered, messages that came at the worst possible time. But now, something inside him refused to stay quiet. He couldn't lose her again, not like this. He canceled all his plans, threw clothes into a bag, and by dawn, he was already on the road to the airport. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to remember everything. Their secret smiles during board meetings, the late nights spent working and laughing, the way time always slipped away when they were together. He remembered their first kiss clearly, rain pouring, both of them running to the car. June laughing softly, brushing water from her hair. She looked like magic that night. He leaned in, unable to hold back anymore, and she kissed him back. In that moment, he felt happier than he had in years. His phone rang, snapping him out of the memory. It was Gina, his ex, the woman the world thought he would marry after she suddenly reappeared when his father fell ill, the woman in all the online photos with him. He ignored the call. None of that mattered now. Only June mattered. As he boarded the plane, he placed a hand over his chest, feeling the weight of regret settle heavily. I should never have let her go, he thought. This time, I'm fighting for her. June's apartment was quiet that afternoon, the soft hum of the heater blending with the gentle clatter of pots in the kitchen. She had taken a long leave from work so she could care for her baby alone. There were no grandparents nearby, no aunties to call, no family just to drive away. Canada had opportunities, yes, but it also had loneliness. Her mind drifted far from the kitchen. She still hadn't gathered the courage to tell her mother about the baby. Her mother, strong, hard-working, a woman who carried the world alone after her father left. Everything she did, every sacrifice, was so June could have a better life than she did growing up in South Africa. And now June had repeated the very mistake her mother warned her about. Pregnant, unmarried, struggling, smiling through fear. She wasn't ashamed of her child, never that, but she couldn't bear the thought of her mother's heartbreak, even if she knew her mother would understand. If only Han had kept his promise. If only he hadn't vanished. If only love didn't break so suddenly. She sighed and stirred the pot again, fighting the heaviness pressing on her chest. Then, a soft knock on the door. Probably a neighbor, she thought. Maybe someone asking for sugar again. She wiped her hands on a towel and walked to the door, opening it casually, and froze. Han stood there. Alive, real, just inches away. For half a minute they simply stared, caught in a silence too heavy for words. Han had rehearsed so many speeches on his flight, whole paragraphs in both English and Chinese. But standing here now, face to face with her, every word he knew slipped out of his mind. June, he breathed, the name catching in his throat. Then he swallowed and forced out, "Good morning, June." June didn't speak. Her eyes felt like knives, sharp, wounded, accusing. Before Han could think of another word, a loud cry filled the apartment behind her. A baby's cry. June turned away and walked inside, leaving the door open. The sound hit Han like a bolt of lightning. His breath caught. For a moment, he wondered if his dream had somehow crossed into reality. He stepped inside slowly, almost afraid of what waited for him. June returned, a small baby in her arms, and just like in his dream, her eyes were glossy with tears. Han's vision blurred. His heart beat painfully against his ribs. "What do you want here, Han?" June said quietly, shifting the baby to her other arm. Her voice was cracking, but her face stayed firm. Han wiped at his eyes. He had so much to say, but the words refused to form. I had a dream," he finally said, and then everything spilled out. About the dream of June by his bed, the baby in her arms, the words she spoke, how he woke up terrified, how he dropped everything, booked the flight, and came straight to her. June's expression tightened. Pain flickered across her face. Tears gathered again, sliding down her cheeks even as she tried to blink them away. "So you abandoned me for over a year, even though you promised you'd come back. You left me for someone else, and now you're here, not because you cared, but because you had a dream?" Her voice shook with anger and heartbreak blending together. Han's eyes widened. "Abandoned? Someone else?" He stared at her confused. His mind raced. What is she talking about? "June, you broke up with me. You sent me a message. You told me not to come back, that you didn't want to see me, that I shouldn't call you." June froze. Her tears stopped instantly, replaced by shock. "I broke up with you," she whispered. "Han, what are you talking about? I would never." Han pulled out his phone, scrolling quickly. He turned the screen to her. June stared at the message, her number, her name, but not her words. Han continued, his voice desperate. "When I got that message, I tried to call you. I tried to reach you. Nothing worked. My father was very sick. I couldn't leave immediately. And then," he hesitated, swallowing the memory, "someone showed me those pictures of you with another man. I thought you didn't want me anymore. I thought you moved on." June shook her head fiercely. "None of that is true. I didn't write that message. I never sent anything like that. And I have never been with anyone else since you left. How could I? I was pregnant." Han's breath caught. His eyes fell on the baby again. "She's mine?" he whispered, pointing gently. June nodded. His face crumpled as tears streamed freely. He stepped closer, hands trembling. "Can I?" asked softly. June hesitated, then placed the baby, Ella, into his arms. Ella quieted instantly, staring up at him with wide, curious eyes. Han held her like she was the most fragile, precious thing he had ever touched. "What's her name?" he whispered. "Ella," June said faintly. "Her name is Ella." Han nodded slowly, memorizing the sound. The weight of the last 18 months sank deep into his heart. But questions still lingered. If you didn't send the message, then who did? And those pictures, how did they come from your number? Why did it look so real? June swallowed. "I saw pictures of you too, with that lady, the one people said you were supposed to marry." A heavy silence settled over the room. Something was wrong, something much bigger than both of them. And just as the truth hovered on the edge of revelation, Han's phone rang sharply, shattering the stillness. Han held baby Ella with gentle, steady arms. She clung to his chest as if she instantly recognized something familiar, something safe. Her tiny fingers curled around the fabric of his coat, and he felt her warmth seep straight into his heart. With one arm supporting her, he checked the phone buzzing in his pocket. Gina. Now was the worst possible moment. He didn't want to speak to her, not here, not now. But if he ignored the call, she would only make things worse.
He answered quickly, keeping his voice low. "I'm in the middle of something important. Please don't disturb me." Before she could reply, he hung up. He barely had a second to breathe before a loud, furious knock shook June's front door. June stiffened. "Who?" She opened the door, and Gina stormed inside as if she owned the place. Her eyes locked onto Han holding Ella, and her face twisted instantly with rage. "So this is what was more important than talking to me?" she snapped, voice cutting through the room like broken glass. June stood frozen at the door, confused, stunned by the stranger barging into her home and shouting. Han stared at Gina, shocked. "What are you doing here?" Gina lifted her chin proudly. She explained that she had gone to his house the morning he left China, realized he was gone, and, obsessed and furious, had followed him all the way to Canada, straight to June's address. "I can't believe you flew across the world for her, for someone who only wants your money. She's a typical gold digger, Han. Didn't you see the message she sent you? Why come back after that?" Han blinked, stunned. A cool chill slid down his spine. "How do you know about the message?" he asked quietly. "I never showed it to anyone." Gina froze. For a split second, guilt flickered across her face, but she quickly masked it with anger. Han drew back slightly. Piece by piece, things began clicking into place. Months ago, she had been the one to accidentally show him the pictures of June with another man, pictures Han never asked for, pictures he never told her he needed. Back then, he was overwhelmed with his father's illness and didn't think much of it. But now it all looked different. "I should be the one asking questions," she snapped, scrambling to take control. She whipped toward June, eyes burning with jealousy. You fiancé stealer." June gasped softly. "Fiancé?" Han stepped forward, anger rising. "Enough," he said sharply. "Don't you ever insult June. Not in her own home." Gina scoffed. "Why defend her? For all we know, she's faking this whole baby situation just to trap you. That's what people like her do." That was it. Han's patience snapped. He gently handed baby Ella back to June, then walked to the door, flung it open, and pointed out. "Leave now." But Gina didn't move. She planted her feet and crossed her arms. "Pick, Han. Me or this gold digger?" Han stared at her as if seeing her clearly for the first time in years. "Gina," he said slowly, "you are my ex. Why on earth would you ever think I would choose you over the mother of my child?" Her eyes widened, filled with disbelief. "So what happened between us at the hospital meant nothing to you?" Han didn't want to hear more. "Get out." His voice was final. Gina's expression twisted with humiliation and rage. She glanced at June one last time, eyes blazing with hatred, before marching out and slamming the door behind her. Silence fell. June stood still, Ella in her arms, heart pounding. She didn't know what to say. She had never experienced such raw hostility from someone she barely knew. She felt small, shaken, and overwhelmed. Finally, her voice cracked through the quiet. "Han, what's happening? What is all this?" Han turned toward her, guilt heavy on his face. "June, I'm sorry. For everything. I had no idea she followed me here, and she's not my fiancé." June waited, silently, holding Ella closer.
Han took a deep breath and explained everything. How their families had been intertwined since childhood. How Gina's father was successful in the restaurant industry and was close friends with his own father. How his father had beloved her so much that he betrothed Han to her when they were young. "We started courting when we came of age," Han said quietly, "but it was a disaster." He told June about Gina's cheating, her manipulations, her excuses. 6 affairs in 1 year, each time blaming Han for her own mistakes. He ended the betrothal long before he ever set foot in Canada. June listened silently, absorbing every word. "But if you broke up with her so long ago, why is she still acting like this?" she asked. Han rubbed the back of his neck. Because my father never stopped liking her. When he fell ill, she came back into our lives, visiting him, pretending to have changed. She apologized, begged me to reconsider, and she convinced my father to push me to forgive her. June swallowed hard. So, nothing happened between you two at the hospital? She said something about no, Han said quickly, shaking his head. She tried, but I rejected her every time. He explained how after he received the fake breakup message, what he believed was from June, his world collapsed. He was heartbroken, depressed, barely sleeping. Gina saw his vulnerability and one night tried to kiss him at the hospital. But I never stopped loving you, Han said softly, his voice almost breaking. Not once. June didn't know how to feel. Her heart was pulled in 100 directions at once. Shock, relief, hurt, hope. But above all, she saw the truth in his eyes. Han had never stopped loving her. And even if forgiveness would take time, she was grateful for one thing. Ella would not grow up without a father. Gina sat in the back seat of the taxi, trembling with rage. Her jaw was clenched so tightly it hurt, and her breaths came in sharp bursts. Outside the window, the airport rolled farther and farther away. As her anger simmered, something dark flickered in her eyes. A smile, thin, wicked, dangerous, slowly curved across her lips. An idea had come. Gina pulled out her phone and began typing furiously. Within minutes, she posted intimate photos of her and Han, images taken back when they were still courting. She paired them with pictures of June she had gathered online. But the caption was the true weapon. She painted herself as the tragic fiancée, the devoted woman who cared for Han's sick father in China, only to have her betrothed stolen by a foreign woman. She accused June of trapping Han in Canada by claiming she had a baby for him. She called June a gold digger, an opportunist who wanted the fortune of the Shen family. The post exploded. Online, outrage spread like wildfire. In China, the Shen family was attacked. In Canada, June faced a storm she never asked for. Cruel comments poured in by the thousands, people calling her names, accusing her of manipulation, some even claiming she must have used African voodoo to steal another woman's fiancé. Han stood in the kitchen, rinsing Ella's feeding bottles. He couldn't stop glancing at her tiny socks drying on the counter, where the stroller tucked by the wall. Every little thing reminded him of the year he lost. A year of first smiles, first sounds, first moments he never got to witness. He had already promised himself he wouldn't waste another second. Even if June never took him back, he would stay. He would be a father to his daughter. Just as he set the bottle down, his phone buzzed. A notification from the board of Greener Grass Holdings. It wasn't good. They demanded an urgent explanation regarding the scandal spreading online. Even though his father was chairman, they warned him plainly. Keeping Han as CEO now posed a risk to the company's reputation and stock value.
Han froze. His phone lit up again and again. Texts, calls, insults. People tearing him apart without ever asking for his side. June walked slowly toward him, holding her phone with shaking hands. Her eyes were glassy with unshed tears. "Han, what's going on?" she whispered. "I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't do anything wrong." She showed him the hateful messages. Han felt something inside him break. He had stayed away for so long, and now that he had come back, all he brought was chaos, pain, danger. He stepped closer, guilt swallowing him. "It's my fault," he said quietly. "All of it. And I'm going to fix this." Before he could say more, his phone rang. His father. The old man's voice was thunderous, far louder than someone who had only recently recovered from a long illness. He didn't ask questions. He didn't listen. He ordered Han to return to China immediately, shouting that if Han dared bring another man's child or a foreign woman into their home, he would disown him, disinherit him, cut him off completely. Han tried to speak, to explain, but his father refused to hear a single word. Then the call ended. June stared at him, no longer afraid for herself, only for him. Han, go back, she begged softly. Please, I don't want your life falling apart because you're trying to do right by me. I and Ella will be okay. But Han had already decided. He shook his head gently, eyes filled with something unshakable. I've already lost so much time with my daughter. And I lost you, the woman I love. If I could erase that pain with a wish, I would. Everything I want, everything I've ever asked for is right here in this apartment. Now that I'm finally here, nothing will take me away. Not until I know I have my family back. June turned her face away for a moment, overwhelmed. Then she whispered, barely loud enough for him to hear, "You didn't lose my love. You could never lose my love." Han's eyes widened. Tears shimmered. A smile, small but full of life, pulled at the corner of his lips. And then, a sudden ring broke the silence. The ringing cut sharply through the room. It wasn't Han's phone this time. It was June's home telephone. She hurried toward it, casting a nervous glance back at Han. She lifted the receiver, and a woman's voice bled through. "Hello, this is the Child Protection Service calling?" June's heart dropped. Her breath caught in her throat. "Child Protection Service?" she echoed, barely above a whisper. "Yes, I believe I'm speaking with June Edwards. We received a complaint alleging that your daughter is living in an extremely unlivable condition and—" June didn't hear the rest. Not a single word. Her legs gave out and she crumpled to the floor, sobbing. Han rushed to her side, eyes wide with confusion. "What happened? June, talk to me." They want to take my baby," she cried, voice shaking. Han grabbed the receiver, his chest tightening. "Hello, this is—" He hesitated. Then the word rolled out of him, warm and certain. "This is the father." For a brief second, he felt an unexpected surge of pride. After a brief exchange, he hung up calmly. The agent would come the next day. June was trembling uncontrollably. Everything had happened so fast, so brutally. Scandal, threats, accusations, and now someone wanted to take her daughter. Han understood immediately. Gina. She was trying to break June apart piece by piece until she was too broken to stay. But something wasn't adding up. This obsession wasn't love, not even jealousy. It was deeper, darker, calculated. Han started to suspect something was very wrong. But Gina had made one mistake. She forgot who Han was.
The son of a powerful family, CEO of the largest real estate empire across China and Asia, a man with international connections and influence. Han took June's trembling hand. "I once broke my promise to you," he said softly, "and I paid for it. I'm still paying. But on my life, June, I will never allow anything to happen to our daughter." And then he began making calls. That night, neither of them slept. June lay beside Ella, watching her baby breathe, tears sliding quietly down her face. The fear of losing her child wrapped around her like a vice. Han sat at the kitchen table, phone pressed to his ear.
His voice was steady, colder than before. He was done being passive. He called his personal lawyer in China. Every lie Gina had spread, every spiteful attack, he would answer all of it. Then he dialed Zhen Gao, his close friend and a minister in the Chinese government. Zhen had been waiting to hear from him, worried through the chaos. Han promised he'd explain everything in detail when he returned to China. But right now, he needed help protecting his family. The moment Zhen understood what was happening, his tone shifted. "I'll take care of it," he said. "I'll contact the ministry that oversees child protection services immediately." Within hours, because of Zhen's intervention, the agency discovered the truth. The complaint was purely malicious, spite, nothing more. Still, they were obligated to send someone for a routine check. The next day, there was a knock on the door. The child protection officer was James, one of Han's former employees in China who had relocated to Canada. Han blinked in surprise. Of all people, what were the chances? James had already been briefed that the complaint smelled like sabotage, and he knew Gina's history. Everyone in the old office did. She was rude, entitled, dismissive, treating staff terribly despite having no authority over them. So when Han explained that Gina had filed a false report, James wasn't shocked at all. After examining Ella and speaking with June, James completed his report in minutes. The baby was safe. The home was stable. There had never been any danger. But relief didn't last long. As James stepped out, Han's phone buzzed again. A voice message from the board. They warned him that if he didn't appear at the next meeting in China to explain himself, he would be removed as CEO. June heard everything. Her face crumpled. "Han, please," she begged. "You have to go back. Your world is falling apart because of me." But Han shook his head firmly. "You cared for our child alone for a year. You worked. You saved every dollar. You survived everything without me. Now, it's my turn to make sacrifices." He looked at her, really looked at her. "I love you, June. I have always loved you, and I will always will." June stared at him, softly, lovingly, but she didn't speak. Not yet. That same evening, far across the ocean in China, Gina stood alone in her glass-walled skyscraper apartment, towering above the glowing city like a queen overlooking a kingdom she was slowly losing. The skyline flickered against her face, but her eyes held no light. Nothing was going according to plan. June should have been gone by now. Han should have been forced back to China. Everything should have fallen neatly into place. Instead, her entire scheme was crumbling. She glanced down at her phone. A single message stared back at her. Cold, urgent, threatening. Her breath trembled. "I'm running out of time," she whispered, voice cracking with frustration. She paced back to her sleek white sofa, mind racing. There was only one option left now, one final card to play. With shaking fingers, she lifted her phone and dialed. A voice answered. Gina inhaled deeply. "I need you to do something for me." And her tone was not a request.
The next morning, while June dressed Ella, slipping a tiny pink dress over the baby's giggling shoulders, her phone vibrated on the bed. A message from an unknown number. She opened it, and her stomach hardened. The text warned her to leave Han for her own safety, claimed Han never loved her, that he was only being kind because of the baby.
said she was from the wrong world and his family would never accept her. That Han was using her out of guilt. Then came the final blow. She would receive $200,000 if she walked away quietly, if she left Han, if she disappeared with Ella. June stared at the message, disgust rising like fire in her chest. This was Gina. It had her fingerprints all over it, cruel, desperate, transactional. As if families could be bought, as if love could be priced. She marched straight to Han and handed him the phone. Han's jaw tensed with anger, but beneath the fury was something warm, a quiet relief. June hadn't hesitated. She hadn't even considered the offer. And that alone reminded him why she was nothing like Gina, why she was the woman he had fallen for. But now it was clear, Gina wasn't stopping. Not until she broke them apart. Han exhaled sharply. It's time to understand what's really going on. That same evening, Han hired a private investigator. By nightfall, the truth was already unraveling, piece by piece, lie by lie. Gina's father's restaurant empire had collapsed, bankrupt, gone. Her inheritance vanished with it. With her father's fortune gone, Gina had turned toward her next lifeline, Han, the CEO of the largest real estate empire in China and Asia. Wealthy, powerful, connected. They had once been betrothed. To Gina, that meant access, security, status, a future she could count on. Until she discovered Han had fallen in love with someone in Canada. Then, everything changed. She needed to erase June, erase Ella, erase all obstacles before Han figured out the truth. It was Gina who sent the fake breakup message. Gina who fed him lies during the worst moments of his father's illness. Gina who orchestrated every accusation. Gina who had done the same thing to other men before, using relationships as stepping stones whenever it suited her. When the investigator finished his report, the truth was painfully clear. Gina wasn't trying to win back a man she loved. She was hunting for survival, and she didn't care who she hurt in the process. Han ran a hand over his face. He pitied his father. Business failure was hard. But Gina's cruelty had gone too far. It was time to end this. Han reached out to an old friend, the president of Crimson Lotus Press, one of China's largest media networks, a man with influence, a man who trusted Han. Together, they built the full story, piece by piece. Han spoke his truth. June spoke hers. Baby Ella sat in June's lap, smiling into the camera with curious eyes. They recorded everything, and Han sent the video straight to Crimson Lotus. The president didn't hesitate. He pushed it out across every platform, news sites, magazines, online forums, social media. To him, this wasn't just journalism. This was personal. This was about clearing the name of someone he respected. The impact was immediate. People who had defended Gina started questioning her story. Her lies began unraveling in the public eye.
And baby Ella became a sensation. Soft cheeks, big eyes, a perfect blend of both parents. People couldn't deny how much she looked like Han. Support for the little family surged. Anger at Gina exploded. Within hours, her pages were flooded with backlash. People demanded answers. People called her out. Some condemned her for trying to take a child from her mother. Overwhelmed, humiliated, cornered, Gina vanished. She deleted everything, went offline, disappeared. But she still had one card left, one last person who might still be on her side: Han's father. Even though the storm around them had begun to calm, Han felt a quiet tug inside him, a need to show June and their daughter the world that shaped him, the place where his story began. He wanted them to see his China, the sights and rhythms that had raised him. More than that, he wanted June to meet his family, to stand beside him fully as the woman he loved. But June's worries still lingered like shadows she couldn't shake off.
She came from a completely different background. Han belonged to a powerful and wealthy family with deep roots and elite connections. She came from a simple home, with no legacy to offer except her own heart and honesty. "I don't think your family will accept me," she had whispered one night. "They must have expected you to marry someone like them." But Han only shook his head. In his voice there was quiet certainty. She didn't need anyone's approval. She was the mother of his daughter. She was the woman he chose. His family had no choice but to accept her, and he would stand between her and any storm that tried to touch her. Still, her fear did not vanish. That fear traveled with her all the way to Shanghai. As the airplane wheels touched the runway, June felt her stomach twist. She had been tense for days, imagining harsh words, cold eyes, judgment waiting behind expensive doors. She knew Han loved her deeply, but love couldn't predict what his family would do, especially his father. His stern voice over the phone still echoed in her mind. At the airport, a full convoy waited for them, black cars lined up with drivers and personal aides ready. It didn't calm her nerves. If anything, it reminded her again of the world she was walking into, a world nothing like hers. The mansion appeared minutes later, rising above the grounds like a modern palace. Tall gates, flawless gardens, and a structure large enough to echo. Han looked at her gently. "This is it." Standing at the entrance, leaning against his cane, was Han's father. Rigid posture, unreadable eyes, a man carved from steel in expectation. And then, stepping out slowly from behind him, was Gina. She walked forward as if she owned the air around her, confident, elegant, wearing a small, proud smile, as if she had been waiting for this moment, expecting victory to finally be hers. But Han pulled June closer, his arm wrapping around her protectively. "Don't mind her," he murmured. "I'll deal with her once we're inside." But Han's father did not glance at Gina. His stare locked on June, then on the tiny girl in her arms. Ella coughed once, then burst into a sweet giggle that echoed through the open courtyard. And something unbelievable happened. Han's father's expression cracked. The hard lines of his face softened. His eyes warmed. Not to Han, not to June, to Ella. He took slow steps toward them, his cane tapping faintly against the stone floor. "Is this my granddaughter?" he asked, voice low but no longer cold. June nodded. Han smiled beside her. The old man reached out carefully. Ella tilted her head, curious, then touched his hand with her tiny fingers. When she giggled, he smiled, a real smile, deep and full. Han froze in surprise. He had never seen his father soften that fast, that completely. "Come inside," Mr. Shen said quickly. "I don't want my granddaughter catching a cold." Gina stood there stunned, her confidence melting into shock. This was not the reunion she had planned. Not at all. Inside the mansion, Mr. Shen disappeared for a moment, then returned holding a small baby toy, old but well kept. "For her," he said. Ella grabbed it gently and laughed again. Mr. Shen chuckled with her, almost boyishly. Han used to laugh like that. That was his favorite toy. June sat there speechless. She had prepared herself for hostility, for coldness, maybe even rejection, but not this gentle warmth, not this unexpected welcome. Meanwhile, Gina lingered in a corner, mouth slightly open, unable to understand how everything had flipped. Mr. Shen asked Han to take June upstairs so she could rest from the long journey. "I expect you both at dinner," he added. Dinner began pleasantly, until Gina's composure finally cracked. "I don't understand what's going on," she snapped, her voice shaking. "Why are you treating her like this? Are you really accepting her, a foreigner, into this home?" The table fell silent. Mr. Shen's face darkened, but not with the anger she expected. "The only reason you were ever allowed in this house is because of the respect I had for your father. But you," his voice sharpened,
You think I don't know what you did? Gina's breath caught. Her hands trembled. She had miscalculated. Completely.
Humiliated, she turned to leave, but Han's voice stopped her cold. Expect to hear from my lawyer soon. She froze, then walked out with shaky steps, her world collapsing around her. A week passed, filled with quiet bonding and the gentle rhythm of family life. One evening, Han took June out to explore Shanghai. The city pulsed with light, glowing buildings, soft river reflections, the hum of night traffic rising like a steady heartbeat. They walked along the Bund, the water shimmering beneath them like liquid silver. June held Ella close, the breeze brushed her face, and beside her, Han walked calmly, watching her with a softness she had never seen in him before. Something in him had settled, as if his heart had finally found its place. Shanghai looks different at night, she whispered. Han nodded slowly. Everything looks different when you're here. They stopped at the railing. The river stretched out before them, quiet and endless. Han reached up gently and brushed her cheek, his touch slow and warm. And for a long time, my life felt empty. June looked at him, feeling his words settle deep inside her. But you came with light, with honesty, with warmth, and everything changed. She swallowed hard. Han. He took Ella from her arms, holding her effortlessly. Ella giggled and grabbed his chin. That tiny laugh made him smile, bright and real. I want this. Not the life I thought I was supposed to live. This one. With you. With her. June's eyes filled with tears. The nightlights. The river. His voice. It was all too much, and yet exactly what she had dreamed. Han shifted Ella into one arm and reached into his pocket. He didn't kneel. He didn't need to. He simply stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his heartbeat. June, I don't want a future without you. Will you marry me? Her breath broke. A tear slipped down her cheek. She looked at Ella, then at Han, the man who had fought for her, chosen her, loved her even when he risked losing everything. Yes, she breathed. Yes, Han. He kissed her forehead first, then her lips, soft and slow. Ella giggled again, waving the toy Mr. Shen had given her. And in that glowing Shanghai night, wrapped in the lights of a city that never slept, June realized something simple and powerful. She had finally found home.
I'm really glad you were here for this story and stayed with me through to the end. I'd love to hear what you think about it. Leave a comment and share your thoughts. I always look forward to the stories you share too. The next story I have for you is even more special, and I don't want you to miss it. So make sure you subscribe and tap the notification bell so you'll know the moment it's out. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, may God bless you in all your endeavors. Bye.